chapter 11 of the book of John. It reads, "And a certain one was sick, Elazar from Bet Aniyah, the village of Miriam and her sister Martha." So here, let me, just a second. That was not, okay. Let me go to the concordance. Okay, let me see. All right, so here, just to look at the names, Bet Aniyah, composed by house and affliction, according, well, we'll see the translation. Lazarus, which is Eleazar, which is whom Elohim helps. Um, Mary or Miriam means rebellion, and it means also um, bitterness. And Martha, okay, so here we have Martha as rebellious also. Um, Basically because of the root mar, or meri is rebellious. Mara is bitterness, and that's why there's a connection between the two. So that is Martha. Let's look at Miriam. Their rebellion, right? And okay, let me see something else. Like I said, Eleazar, right? It comes from this Eleazar, which means Elohim has helped. My mighty one, Eleazar, is help. So, and Betaniah says house of dates or house of misery, house of affliction. So, with that in mind, we'll go back to the verse, and it reads, "And a certain one was sick, Eleazar, whom Elohim helps, or my Elohim helps, from Bet Aniyah, helps." So, the point of seeing the sorry, the meanings of the names is because, as you guys know, when we look at the definition of each of the names that appear in each of the chapters of scriptures, the Almighty, the Ruach HaKodesh, gives us a revelation other than obviously the literal one. So here we have, my mighty one helps the house of affliction, bitterness, and rebellion. So he, as we're about to see, had died, and therefore he was in Sheol, the place where the souls go. After the person dies, the soul goes to Sheol, and that would be a house, right? Because that's where the souls go to stay for a while of affliction because they don't have life. And obviously, when it comes to the bad part of Sheol, there is bitterness because of the rebellion. Those who are there, of course, right? So death represents darkness, right? Represent is represented by being asleep. So here we have that it says once again, and a certain one was sick, Elazar from Beit Aniyah, the village of Miriam and her sister Martha. Now it was Miriam who anointed the sovereign with perfume and wiped his feet with her hair, whose brother Eleazar was sick. So that same Miriam, who already had recognized Mashiach as such and had anointed him, recognizing him as the anointed one, as the Messiah. And well, we already saw that chapter. We talked about what it represent, each part of it. The hair, as we know, represents the ruach over the woman, over the person. Long hair over women is pretty much a veil and a covering of the ruach, what it represents. So she wiped his feet with her hair, which also shows her. the way she loved Mashiach, right? Because most women take a lot of care of their hair as to use it as a towel, right? So, whose brother Elazar was sick. So, therefore, the sisters sent to him, saying, Sovereign, see, he whom you love is sick. So, Mashiach was a very close friend of Eleazar. Um, Also, pretty much there's a word that, well, it is normal, right? It is normal to love your friends. So there is a word for friend, which pretty much means also loved one, as in, right, the friend that you love. Um, and well, I say that because obviously Yahushua loves everybody. We know through the book of John that Yahuhanan, John, was the disciple that was called the beloved. He was beloved by Mashiach. As we know, he loves, we could say, everyone the same um, way, in the same strength of that love, however, in a different way, according to will of the Father, according to the person, according to each each of well, yeah, the mission or the ministry or the purpose for which Yahweh has sent that person to this world, and how he or she needs to relate with the Most High through Mashiach. So um, here they say this as, remember your friend who you actually really, really love. Like, could you please help him, right? Sovereign, see, he whom you love is sick. So they only said that, and that's like, I repeat, like saying you love him, so you should do something about it because you are healing people whom you don't know. So you should heal those who you actually love, right? Obviously, I repeat, Yahushua taught loving everybody, even your enemy. But I'm saying this from the perspective of those sisters, right? Um, Pretty much saying like it is obvious that if you are healing everybody, please, you should heal those whom you love. So also, Miriam and Martha represent the few and the many, the two groups that enter the kingdom of Yahweh, the two folds of sheep that we saw in the previous chapter, John 10. So, therefore, the sisters sent to him, saying, Sovereign, see, him whom you love is sick. But when Yahushua heard, he said, This sickness is not unto death, but for the esteem of Elohim, so that the Son of Elohim might be esteemed by it. So this is very important. It's key to understand what's happening here. Remember that in the no, in John 9, we read about the man who was born blind, right? And I spoke about how in the Talmud, the Jews have a belief that the Messiah that had to appear had to fulfill four specific miracles, which were to heal a leopard, which he did, 10 of them, to heal a mute and deaf, basically, yeah, take out the spirit that does that in a person, and then to heal a blind person from birth, which happened in John 9, and then the last and fourth miracle that would confirm a person as Messiah was to resurrect somebody after 3 days have already passed, 3 days and 3 nights, because there is a belief that it is possible to do so within those 3 days. But if someone had the power of the Most High, then he would be able to do it even after the 3 days, right? So the resurrections that we see before Mashiach, they all happen, and I mean in the Tanakh, they all happen within the first 3 days of the death of the person. So it is said that there has to be within those 3 days so that the soul still remains close and in some way attached to the body, and there has to be humidity in the environment. So, which is part of the reason why Yahweh asked, um, made Eliyahu prayed for rain after 3.5 years of no rain. When a child had to be resurrected, Eliyahu realized that he had to make make it rain before being able to resurrect the child. So, yeah, exactly. So, we see that Yahushua here says, "This sickness is not unto death." Now we know, and spoiler alert, we know that Elazar is going to die, right? But Yahushua, and I say that because some would see this and perhaps think that Yahushua was lying. Of course, he wasn't lying because he was going to resurrect him. So it wasn't going to be uh, regular death, right? He wasn't going to remain dead. He was going to be brought back from the dead. So it would be like being healed from a sickness, right? Or woken up. So it says, "This sickness is not unto death." Now, but for the steam of Elohim, for the steam of Yahweh. Remember that when we read John 9, that is pretty much the same thing that Yahushua said when the disciples asked why that person was born blind. If it had been because he sinned in a previous life, or if it was because of the sins of his parents. And in that case, Yahushua said, "This is for the steam of Yahweh." It needed to happen that way so that he would be healed in that day, in that moment, by the Messiah, and they will recognize him as Messiah. However, the people in general, they didn't. They were blinded. So here we see the same thing. Yahushua realized that that fourth miracle that he had to fulfill was going to be fulfilled through his friend Elazar. So, as he always did, he spoke in a way that many people would not understand, and then they would interpret something completely different. Yet he wasn't lying; he was being straight by saying, "This sickness is not unto death, but for the steam of Yahweh, so that the Son of Yahweh might be esteemed by it." So he was to give honor to the Messiah, so that the Son of Yahweh might be esteemed by it. It was so that people would realize through that action that he is the Messiah. So that was needed. This resurrection needed to happen. Now, Yahushua loved Martha and her sister and Elazar. So Yahuhanan has to say, just in case somebody will misinterpret the fact that Yahushua got the message and remained where he was. He actually loved them. And I repeat, he loved the whole world because he came to die for us. And he says to love the enemy. But if the scripture tells us that he loved them, is because, as we know, every love is different. And also, in this case, that would mean that they were very close, right? So Yahushua loved Martha and her sister and Elazar. Like I said, Martha represents the many, Miriam, the sister, the few, and Elazar would represent Eliyahu, the second witness, the other witness of Revelation 11. Therefore, when he heard that he was sick, then indeed he stayed at the place where he was 2 more days. All right. So this is a reaction that most people would see as um, not empathetic, right? As him not doing what he preaches. Because if he claims to love them, why is he not going to go see them right away? But he remains 2 more days. Like he pretty much said, like to the ears of most likely, he'll be fine. He's not gonna die. let's continue here, right? He had another plan, but that's what people would interpret. Therefore, when he heard that he was sick, then indeed he stayed at the place where he was 2 more days. Now, this represents the fact that there would be 2 more millennia, right? 2 more days, because to Yahweh, 1 day is like 1,000 years. So 2 more days are the 2 millenniums that have passed from the first to the second manifestation. Basically, Yahushua came 2 days ago, 2,000 years ago, right? So now in our time is when the first resurrection is going to happen. That's why Yahushua stayed 2 more days after he was told, in order to go and resurrect, right? A lot of people don't believe in Mashiach because there has been 2,000 years after he came, and things are even worse than they were, right? So they think that it's all lies, that he's not going to come, that resurrection is a lie, whatever, whatever. But it is in scriptures through prophecy, like we see in Hosea chapter 6, verse 1 and 2, for instance, but there are others, that there would be 2,000 years between the first and the second manifestation, between Yahushua having come and resurrecting, and then for the first resurrection to happen during the seventh trumpet, as Paul said it. So there would be 2 days, 2,000 years. Therefore, when he heard that he was sick, then he indeed stayed at the place where he was 2 more days. Just like Yahushua stayed 2,000 years in heaven, right, by the side of the Father, even though people that he loves would continue dying. Then, after this, he said to the taught ones, the disciples, right? Let us go back to Yahudah. So after those 2 days, he was like, all right, let's go. The taught one said to him, Rabbi, the Yahudim were but now seeking to stone you, and you are going back there? Right? As we saw in the previous chapters, the Yahudim, the Jews, wanted to kill him because of what he was revealing, the fact that he is the Messiah. They didn't want that. They didn't want to accept it, even though he made the miracles that they should have seen and accepted as enough evidence of his identity. So we see that Yahushua wants to go see Eleazar because he has to fulfill that fourth miracle. And the disciples, they remember that they wanted to kill him. So they're like, but what? I mean, if we go there, they might kill you this time, right? So the third ones said to him, Rabbi, the Yehudim were but now seeking to stone you, and you are going back there? So this is interesting because it is as if the Malachim were talking to Yahweh and Mashiach, saying, but they just sacrificed you 2,000 years ago, and you were thinking about going back there, right? So, as we know, just like Yahushua the first died as the lamb of Pesach and the male goat of Yom Kippur, the last will die as the ox of Yom Kippur, to fulfill those two parts as first and last. So it is being represented here. As you guys know, the book of John was written in the fourth level of interpretation, which is Sod, which means mystery. So it is the one that has more depth when it comes to interpretation, revelation. So in the literal sense, Yahuhanan, John, is telling us everything that happened historically with Mashiach, as he saw, for he was a witness of everything. On the other hand, spiritually, he is speaking about the coming of the last prophetically. So, Yahushua answered, are there not 12 hours in the day? If anyone walks in the day, he does not stumble because he sees the light of this world. But anyone but if anyone walks in the night, he stumbles because the light is not in him. He said this, and after that he said to them, our friend Elazar has fallen asleep, but I'm going there to wake him up. Right? So he's pretty much telling him, um, in the most simple sense, As long as we are doing right, there's no reason for them to do anything, and Yahweh won't allow it, and they won't do it in the public eye because they would be seen as unjust, right? So while there is day, let's go so that they don't catch us at night, where they could hide whatever they would want to do. Obviously, in the spiritual, he's talking about how he is the light. And if we have him within us, then we walk as in the day, in the way, which is him as well. So he, Yahweh, will protect us. Also, remember that the day of the coming of the Son of Man, which pretty much happens during the last week of Daniel, which are 7 years. Those 7 years are split up in two parts of 3.5 and 3.5 years. Just like a day of 24 hours has 12 hours of day, 12 hours of night. So here it is like talking about the first 3.5 years, which is when the two witnesses will prophesy for 1,260 days, which is 3.5 years, as Revelation 11 says. Yahushua answered, are there not 12 hours in the day? If anyone walks in the day, he does not stumble because he sees the light of this world, right? So if we recognize Mashiach as the light of the world, as he said, then you won't stumble. Yahweh will protect um your walk, every step that we take. Every move, also every move and everything. All right. If anyone walks in the day, he does not stumble because he sees the light of this world. But if anyone walks in the night, remember that like I said, the second half of the last 7 years would be the night, the worst part, the last plagues. Also, the end times in general, when we see history as a whole, we would be in the spiritual night. That's why Yahushua said that the Son of Man would come like a thief in the night. So, but if anyone walks in the night, he stumbles because the light is not in him. That is interesting because it doesn't say because there is no light like the sun, right? But it says because there is no light in him, within. So he's talking about the spiritual light, which is himself, Yahushua, the light of the world. So it's interesting that he says to be the light of the world. However, he speaks about the light of the world as apart from him, and therefore he would represent the last when he testifies during the first half of the last seven, the 3.5 years, the 12 hours of day. He testifies of Mashiach as the light of this world. So are there not 12 hours in the day? If anyone walks in the day, he does not stumble because he sees the light of this world. He has faith in Mashiach. But if anyone walks in the night, he stumbles because the light is not in him. So we have to have Mashiach within us because there is no way to be saved or to find him outside in this uh, generation. Back in the day, it was easier because it was spiritual day. So he said this, and after that, he said to them, our friend Elazar has fallen asleep, but I am going there to wake him up. So he was talking about the fact that he had died and he was going to resurrect him. But they didn't understand that language, spiritual language, right? Those parables and um, metaphors and everything. So he said, has fallen asleep, but I am going there to wake him up. Therefore, the third one said to him, Sovereign, if he has fallen asleep, he shall recover. Right? Because they were worried about the Yehudim stoning him and them, right? Killing them. So if like they said, well, if he's actually asleep, then that's gonna help him. Why would we go and uh, put our lives in danger? So therefore, the third ones said to him, Sovereign, if he has fallen asleep, he shall recover. But Yahushua had spoken about his death, whereas they thought that he spoke of taking rest in sleep. So then Yahushua said to them plainly, Elazar has died. Right? So he had to go as clear as possible for them to get it and understand that they had to go. So then Yahushua said to them plainly, Elazar has died. And for your sake, I am glad I was not there in order for you to believe. Right? Because if he had been there, most likely he would not have died. And therefore, they would not have this chance for the resurrection to happen and for them to believe even more than they already did. And for others to get to believe in him as Mashiach. And for your sake, I am glad I was not there. Also, because if he had died while Yahushua was there, he would have to, well, according to everybody's belief, right? He would have to resurrect him right away, not wait 4 days. So, for your sake, I am glad I was not there in order for you to believe. But let us go to him. Thomas, right? Thomas, who is called the twin. Remember that there are a couple of opinions regarding Thomas as being a twin, and therefore he would be the only brother who believed of the two, or that he was called a twin because he looked just like Mashiach. Some believe. Either way, the fact that he is called a twin, and what I already explained, well, no, I explained it in the other study in Spanish, I believe, but we'll get there eventually here in this book. Um, as the twin, he is connected with a malach. There are two malachim who are called twins, who are called in Judaism Metatron and Sandalphon. It is believed in Judaism that Sandalphon is the angel who became Eliyahu, and Metatron, according to other writings, is the same as Michael or Michael. They are called twins. It is believed that they are the ones that are connected with the two cherubim over the Ark of the Covenant, for instance. It is also believed that Michael is the high priest in the temple in the heavens. Yahushua came to the earth to become the high priest according to the order of Melchizedek, right? So there is a part which we will see eventually of how Thomas, by being the twin, represents being the priest that checks the offering of Mashiach as the lamb of Pesach. Uh, Therefore, I mean, connected to the angel as the priest in the heavens, as it was believed or is fact, and also as the copy of Mashiach, the twin of Mashiach, checking Mashiach as the offering, right? For he couldn't check himself in that way, I guess. So here we have that it says, and I repeat, the twin references those, mainly the witness like Moshe, Michael, Metatron, as a brother of Mashiach when it comes to the general creation. When I say that, I mean Yahweh said he is the first and the last. We know that the first is Yahushua, and Yahushua says that he sends his messenger, which is Michael, and that is the last, the second manifestation of Yahweh on this earth. For Michael is the Malach of Yahweh, who also represented him throughout the Tanakh. So first and last as brothers, as the story of the prodigal son, as Yakin and Boaz. But when it comes to the end times, the two witnesses are also seen as twins, right? So in these two instances, the first and last being the witness like Moshe, the last, and also when it comes to the end times, the two witnesses of the first 3.5 years, the witness like Moshe and Eliyahu, also as twins. Um, like for instance Moshe and Aharon, they were brothers, not twins, but they were brothers. And also the twin references the constellation of the twins, Gemini, which is the constellation connected with the third month, which is when Shavuot happens, which is when the congregation received the Ruach HaKodesh. And there was um, the offering of the day of Shavuot are two loaves of bread, like the two tablets of the Ten Covenants, like the two twins of that constellation, and um, like the two witnesses. So Thomas, who is called the twin, then said to his fellow taught ones, "Let us also go, so that we die with him." So Thomas, he thought that since they were going to stone him the other day, and now Yahushua is saying that Elazar died, he pretty much is saying, well, I guess we're going to go there to die and go with him. That is the point. He didn't get the fact that he was going to resurrect him, because you see how Yahushua said, "I'm going. He is asleep, and I'm going to wake him up." However, when he spoke plainly, let me see where it was. Right here, he only said Elazar has died. He didn't say, "And I'm going to resurrect him." Right. So they got that part. Elazar has died. And for your sake, I am glad that I was not there in order for you to believe. He doesn't tell them why they're going to believe or what they are going to believe, but let us go to him. So since he says, let us go to him, after having said he has died, Thomas is like, oh no, we're going to go to Sheol, because that's where he is. That means we're going to go to die. So let us go and die with him. Is that understood? Um, Also, since I said Thomas, the twin, the last, says, let us go and die with him. Elazar represents Eliyahu, Yahushua the first, and Thomas the last as the twin. So let us go and die with him. That's like saying that just like Eliyahu dies, Yahushua had to die on Pesach, and then the last as the twin will die with him, with Eliyahu, here Elazar, right? So I repeat, the twin Thomas as the witness like Moshe, the last. Elazar as Eliyahu. So when Thomas says, let us die with him, is because the witness like Moshe, represented by Thomas, is going to come in the end times with Eliyahu, represented by Elazar. And they have to die just like Mashiach died 2,000 years ago. So not in the same way, but for the same reasons, pretty much, for the congregation. So Thomas, who is called the twin, he said to his fellow taught ones, "Let us go. Let us also go, so that we die with him." I repeat, Yahushua only explained the part of Elazar having died, and then said, "Let us go to him." And they wanted to kill him the other day, so Thomas pretty much thinks they are going to have to go and die, become martyrs, and go to Elazar at Sheol. Therefore, when Yahushua arrived, he found that he had already been 4 days in the tomb. 4 days. So, when it comes to the days mentioned in the chapter, we had 2 days mentioned before, the 2 days that he stayed. And now, when he reaches there, there are 4 days since he died. So, uh, we could say that, um, well, obviously, the time that it took for them to travel, the 2 days that he stayed, the time that it took the message to get to him, etc. Um, but the numbers that have been mentioned are 2 and 4, which makes 6, just like there would be 6 millenniums from Adam to the last Adam. I mean, to the last, or to the son of Adam, to the Ben Adam, the son of man, right? Yahushua is called the last Adam, for he started everything again spiritually. So, in fact, Yahushua, he came on the fourth day. He came to end the fourth millennium, because he came as the light of the world, and the light of the world, which is the sun, was created on the fourth day. So Yahushua came to close the fourth millennium and to resurrect, to give us the resurrection for eternal life. So now, when he reaches there to resurrect Elazar and to show us what he came to do to the world, he got there on the fourth day, just like he manifested on the earth on the fourth millennium as the light of the world, the fourth day. So, therefore, when Yahushua arrived, he found that he had already been 4 days in the tomb. So that was too long, according to Judaism, too long for a person to be able to be resurrected. And that was on purpose because Yahushua needed to do the impossible. Now, Betaniah was near Jerusalem, about 15 stadia away, which is about 3 kilometers or 2 miles. But so now Betaniah was near Jerusalem, about 15 stadia away, and many of the Yehudim had come to Martha and Miriam to comfort them concerning their brother. Martha then, when she heard that Yahushua was coming, met him, but Miriam was sitting in the house. Martha then said to Yahushua, Sovereign, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. Right? So it's completely understandable what she says. However, when we look at it in other ways, we have here that she says, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. So in a way, sadly, when we are sad, we tend to blame the Almighty. Well, humans, I don't want to say that we do because we shouldn't. Humans tend to blame Yahweh for things that needed to happen, for things that sometimes are our fault. So, Sovereign, if you had been here, but he wasn't. So why think about that? And that shows her lack of faith, right? Because he is there now. So why think about time as a limitation for Yahushua? Now, this is very interesting because Yahushua is the light, right? And we spoke about that already in this chapter. And as you guys know, Albert Einstein spoke about how the closer you get to the speed of light, the slower time gets until you reach the speed of light and time stops, right? So time does not affect light because light is eternal. Time is not. So light is above time, is from a different reality which permeates into this one, just like Yahushua is from the heavens and entered the earth in order to save us and give us the light, right? So, um, by Yahushua being the light, he is eternal, and therefore time does not limit him. So it didn't matter if he had died 4 days before he got there. Just like it doesn't matter anybody who died 2,000 years before Mashiach came, 4,000 years before Mashiach came. Well, that was too much. 3,000 years before Mashiach came, right? Because Adam died at 930 years. So pretty much around the first 1,000 years. So Yahushua is going to be able to resurrect everybody from before his time and everybody after his time. Time does not limit him, just as light is not of the reality of time, is above it. Is that understood? So what she's saying shows her lack of faith, just like she represents the many who have that lack of faith and understanding. So she not only blames him in a way for not being there, which is understandable when you love someone and everything. I mean, those things are understandable. But then uh, has a lack of faith for thinking that time, like, it's like saying now you cannot do anything. You would be able to do something days ago when he was alive, but now you won't be able to do anything. Sovereign, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. But even now, I know that whatever you might ask of Yahweh, Yahweh shall give you. So she's hopeful. right? And I said the thing about the lack of faith because of her, um, what she declares in in the previous verse, but then she goes on to show hope, which is different than faith, right? Hope is different than faith. Yet most people who claim to have faith have only hope and think that faith is hope, but they are different. So, but even now, I know, and just in case, hope is very great as well, just in case, and hope is eternal, but it's different than faith. Three things are eternal: love, which is connected to the Father, Yahweh, who is love, faith, which is Yahushua, and hope, which is the Ruach HaKodesh. So, but even now I know that whatever you might ask of Elohim, Elohim, Yahweh shall give you. Yahushua said to her, your brother shall rise again. Martha said to him, I know that he shall rise again in the resurrection at the last day. Right? So she confirms that she doesn't have faith. She has hope because Yahushua just told her, your brother shall rise again. She could have said, right now, right? Like, okay, let's see it. But no, she's like, yeah, I know in the resurrection of the dead, like when everybody else will resurrect, right? So she's like, yeah, I don't want to hear that. Anybody can tell me that. I've heard it these past 4 days from all types of rabbis. Yahushua said to her, your brother shall rise again. Martha said to him, I know that he shall rise again in the resurrection at the last day. Yahushua said to her, I am the resurrection. This is wonderful. This is beautiful because she's still stuck in time, thinking about the last day as the time when he will rise again. Yet Yahushua said, what day? I am the resurrection. It's not about time. It's about me, Yahushua HaMashiach, right? I am the resurrection and the life. He who believes in me, though he dies, he shall live. So, as we know, when a person believes in Mashiach, even if that person dies, that soul continues to live and to experience just a different reality until he or she receives a new body in order to experience the reality of the living or this reality of earth. Um, and here, let me see, says, I am the resurrection and the life. He who believes in me, as Elazar did, though he dies, as he did, he shall live. That's why he will be resurrected to show that what he's saying is true, so that everybody would know that any person that has died, if they died believing in Mashiach as the Son of the Most High, then that person still living and will eventually be in the kingdom with his family members or her family members. So he who believes in me, though he dies, he shall live. And everyone that is living and believing in me shall never die at all. Do you believe this? Now, this is amazing because I repeat, Yahushua came 2,000 years ago and people still dying, just like he remained 2 days after. So, somebody who is just carnal or stuck in time, as Martha was right there, won't understand this because they would say, "Oh, I know so many believers who have died and still they are dead," right? But they don't understand that there will be a time of mercy for everybody else to be able to also receive that life after resurrection. Yet they have taken that time to rebel and believe even less and reject the promise. And I mean, in general, obviously, there are some who have, like we, have accepted that gift. So And everyone that is living and believing in me shall never die at all. So, in the sense of the past 2,000 years, when they die, it is only for this reality, right? We are the ones seeing the body decomposed and everything, but the soul of the person, which is the actual person, still experiences life, experiences reality, just a different one. But when it comes to a more literal sense, as I was saying regarding this book of John and how it relates to the coming of the last in the prophetical sense, we know that the chosen few who accept the testimony of the two witnesses and therefore confess Yahushua as the Messiah, they will receive the seal of the living mighty one, which is the name of the Father and the Son in their mind, their foreheads, Revelation 14:1, and they will be saved from this reality without having to experience death. So this will happen also in the literal sense with the few in the end times. And everyone that is living and believing in me shall never die at all. Do you believe this? She said to him, yes, sovereign. I believe that you are the Messiah, the Son of Yahweh, who is coming into the world. We can see this as, well, her saying to him in that moment, you, who is revealing yourself to the world right now. But by also saying who is coming into the world shows that it is a future tense, so shows the prophetical sense of what I was saying, that he, Yahweh, has to come in the end times into the world. But also the fact that it is Yahweh, Elohim, the one who is coming into the world through what Yahushua is doing. Because Yahushua is becoming the way through which the presence and the knowledge of Yahweh will fill this world in order for this reality to become like the heavens, right? To fill the whole reality, the whole of creation with light. So it is through Mashiach that Yahweh is coming into the world. Yes, sovereign, I believe that you are the Messiah, the Son of Yahweh, who is coming into the world. And having said this, she went away and called her sister Miriam secretly, saying, the teacher is here and calls you. When she heard, she rose up quickly and came to him. He calls you, right? Like many are called, but few are chosen. She heard the call and went up quickly. When she heard, she rose up quickly and came to him. And Yahushua had not yet come into the village, but was in the place where Martha met him. So that's also interesting. Like perhaps there were a lot of people there trying to talk to him or something, but he met Martha there and he stayed there. He didn't continue to go to Lazarus. He's like, oh yeah, I forgot it. Lazarus, I need to wake him up. And Yahushua had not yet come into the village, but was in the place where Martha met him. Therefore, the Yehudim who were with her in the house and were comforting her, when they saw that Miriam rose up quickly and went out, followed her, saying, she's going to the tomb to weep there. Right? Always making assumptions. They made assumptions regarding Messiah, and that's why they killed him. They rejected him and eventually killed him because of envy and many other reasons. So, making assumptions, they were like, okay, she's going to the tomb. Let's go with her. Miriam, therefore, when she came where Yahushua was and saw him, she fell down at his feet, saying to him, Sovereign, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. Same thing, right? Again, um, which I repeat comes from emotions, their in the intimacy that they had with Mashiach, and therefore how comfortable they were with him telling him this. Sovereign, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. Once again showing lack of faith. Yahushua, therefore, when he saw her weeping, and the Yehudim who came with her weeping, he groaned in the spirit and was troubled. So, for two reasons. One, because he is in the flesh, he has emotions, empathy, he loves them, and he sees them crying, so he cries. But also because he saw the lack of faith. They were not recognizing what he came to do, what he was doing. So it says, he groaned in the spirit and was troubled and said, "Where have you laid him?" They said to him, "Sovereign, come and see." Yahushua wept, right? So Yahushua loved Eleazar. It is quite possible, of course, that just thinking about the fact that Eleazar was uh, dead made him uh, weep, right? But we know that Yahushua is the life, and he knows that, and he knows that he's going to resurrect him. He knows that he's going to see him. So it seems to say that these tears that he shed here had to do with the empathy he had for the people that had no faith, for them who were crying and crying, and he loves them. And he doesn't want them to cry, and it is written also that we should cry with those who cry. So Yahushua did cry, even though he knew that Elazar was about to be awakened, right? But still, I repeat, he was in the flesh, he had emotions, and it is quite possible also because of the love that he had for Elazar that he started thinking about what Elazar had to go through before dying, right? So even though he's going to bring him back, there is pain also for knowing that his beloved friend had to go through death. And not only that, there Yahushua had to wait for the fourth day in order for this miracle to be part of those four miracles that he needed to fulfill according to Judaism. So imagine also the the feeling that he had because of the fact that he had to wait 4 days. So they were all crying for 4 days. They were all asking themselves why Yahweh allowed that, why Yahushua was not there, why he didn't appear, why this, why that. So Yahushua, in order to fulfill this miracle, had to act in a way that they didn't expect, and they had to suffer for 4 days, a lot, right? So all of that could be part of the reason why Yahushua wept. The Yehudim therefore said, "See how he loved him." Right? So once again, assuming it is true that he loved him, but that is not the reason or the only reason why he's crying. He's crying because of the Yehudim, the lack of faith. He's crying because the lack of faith of Martha and Miriam who know him. He's crying because they were crying and they were in pain and he loves them. But they, the Yehudim, said, okay, he really loved him because he's crying now. And some of them said, "Was this one who opened the eyes of the blind not also able to prevent this one from dying?" So you see once again how people, how sad. I mean, it is understandable to come to this conclusion, but the way they come to this conclusion is through negative thoughts. It is the enemy working in there, right? Like bringing doubt in Mashiach because of this um, event, because of this happening, right? The fact that Elazar died. Look at him crying for Elazar. He loved him, yeah, but why couldn't he save him? Why couldn't he heal him before he died? So was this one who opened the eyes of the blind not also able to prevent this one from dying? Yahushua, therefore, again groaning in himself, right, showing that that was part of it, the lack of faith, came to the tomb. Now it was a cave, and a stone laid against it. Now this is interesting. Well, the cave represents Sheol again. The stone represents the heart of men, which needed to be changed for a heart of flesh, as it was prophesied in the prophets, um, in the Tanakh, that Yahweh would change our heart, which was of stone, to give us through the good news. So Yahushua came to give us the new heart through the new covenant. So the stone, I repeat, represents the heart that we had before Mashiach. Now it was a cave and a stone laid against it. Yahushua said, "Take away the stone." So we see that they, Martha, Miriam, and the Yehudim were lacking faith regarding the resurrection that they were about to witness. So the take away the stone in the literal sense obviously means that just remove the stone so that he can come out. But in the spiritual, Yahushua is telling us to remove the stone that is blocking faith. Remove that heart of stone in order to receive a heart of flesh. I will give you a new heart. So says, I will give you a new heart and put a new spirit within you. I will take the heart of stone out of your flesh and give you a heart of flesh. I will put my spirit within you and cause you to walk in my statutes, and you will keep my judgments and do them. The lep haven of stone to give us one of flesh, basar. And remember that Yahushua gave his basar, his flesh, to give us the besorot, the good news. So through the good news, the new covenant, we receive the new heart. So we need to remove the heart of stone. So we see here that Yahushua, when he says, take away the stone, is pretty much telling them just take away doubt, take away the negative thoughts that bring you to doubt in the power of Yahweh and the goodwill of the Most High. So Yahushua said, take away the stone. Martha, the sister of him who had died, said to him, Sovereign, already he smells, for it is 4 days. Right? So she still doesn't understand. She is like, oh, he was crying. He loves him so much. He just wants to see him again, even though he is dead. He wants to open the tomb to see him, but he's going to smell. Yahushua said to her, did I not say to you that if you believe, you shall see the steam of Yahweh? So he just told her that not long ago. I think it took longer for me to get to this verse than in the story itself, right? My point is that imagine how fast she forgot because she had said, yeah, of course I believe. I believe that whatever you want, whatever you ask, you'll get it. Verse 27, she said to him, yes, sovereign, I believe that you are the Messiah, the Son of Yahweh, who is coming into the world. Right? So that should be enough to believe that he can do whatever he wants, just like he had told her. In fact, I am the resurrection and the life. So now, verse 40, 13 verses after, did I not say to you that if you believe, you shall see the steam of Yahweh? So they took away the stone where the dead man was laid. That's interesting. The stone where the dead man was laid. There is a story in Judaism. It's not that necessary for this that I'm about to say, but I think it adds a little bit of um, color to it. um, there is a story that says that when the it is pretty grotesque in a way if you actually imagine it. But in Judaism, there's a story that when Adam and Eve were in the garden, Samael, who is Satan, the first Satan. I say the first Satan because we know there are three main Satans that are mentioned in the scriptures. But in Judaism, they only think of Samael as Belial. That is Satan for them. Some don't even believe in Satan. Most are actually worshiping Satan without knowing that it is the enemy, or some knowingly. Um, then in Christianity, Lucifer is Satan, yet they forget about Samael and Azazel. They don't take him in account, and etc. etc. So Samael, which is the first enemy, the first angel to have fallen, took his child as a baby. Like, so he appeared in the garden in that story. I'm not saying it's a factual story, it's a story to teach about how the inclination to evil came into the heart of men. So it says that Samael appeared as a father with a child before Adam and Eve, and he told them, "Could you please take care of my child for a little bit while I go and do something I need to do?" So they said, "Of course, just leave him there, and we'll take care of him." So it says that the child started crying and crying and crying and crying and crying, and he wouldn't shut up, and he wouldn't shut up. So they started um, trying to shut him up in all the ways possible. They started nicely, but then they started to pretty much beat him up, and he wouldn't shut up until they hit him so hard that he pretty much stopped breathing, but he would continue to yell somehow. So the story says that they cut him in pieces because they couldn't take any longer that sound, and he continued to produce that sound. So they decided to eat him, and they ate him, and then once they ate him, right away, Samael appeared, the father of that child. And when he appeared and asked for the child, and they were about to give an answer, a voice came from the heart of Adam and Eve and said, "It is done, Father. I am within them. I am in their hearts." So that is a story to say that a way in which the enemy enter the flesh of men and remain there, and that's why there is that inclination to evil, the Yetzerara, which is pretty much what happened when Eve took the fruit, right? She ate something that, because of her disobedience, produced evil within her, and the knowledge of it, which started growing in the flesh, and every child that she would have would bring it because of men, not because of, um, well, because of the seed of men. And I say that because that's why Yahushua had to come through a virgin, not to have that comes from the seed of men, because sin entered through men, because he was the head, and he listened to his woman when she told him to eat of the fruit. So all of that, because now look at this. So they took away the stone, which we saw as the obstacle to belief, which is doubt in the heart of stone. So they took away the stone where the dead man was laid. And in the spiritual interpretation, in a kind of negative way, the dead men, as in death, let's call it, enter men, their heart, which made it of stone, when we ate of the fruit of knowledge, right? So, how interesting that it says here. So, they took away the stone, as in they took away the heart of stone, which is filled with doubt, where the dead man was laid, where the enemy was, the inclination to evil, needs to be taken away by changing the heart. Now, continuing, obviously, in the literal, we're talking about Elazar, and he was not evil, not at all. And Yahushua lifted up his eyes and said, "Father, I thank you that you have heard me, and I know that you always hear me. But because of the crowd standing by, I say this, in order that they believe that you sent me." Right? This is beautiful. It shows, right? I love it that Yahushua has to clear it up, right? He's like, "I'm saying this because of them that are listening at the moment, not because I need to say it or because you need to hear it," right? In the sense that when we pray, we need to know that He is listening to us. And even more by the fact that we do it in the name of Yahushua, for He is our intercessor. That's why He's acting as such in this part. So he who prays needs to believe that he is being heard. If not, why pray? Right? So Yahushua obviously knows that, and he believes it, but he has to say these things for people around so that they realize that what is about to happen is going to happen because Yahushua asked of the Father to bring Elazar to life. So he needs to make this prayer out loud. So I find it a little bit funny that he has to explain himself during the prayer. It says, Father, I thank you that you have heard me. So that would bring voices to others like, oh, so what? Like sometimes he doesn't hear him or what? And I know that you always hear me, right? Oh, okay, okay. He hears him always. But because of the crowd standing by, I say this. So they're like, oh, it's because of us. In order that they believe that you sent me. And when he had said this, he cried with a loud voice. Now it's interesting now that I think about it. He cried with a loud voice. This word he cried could come from the verb shua. Remember that the word shua means riches, it means salvation, but it also means to cry out. And when he had said this, he cried with a loud voice, Elazar, come out. So through his shua, through his salvation, he had the authority to bring Elazar out. And Elazar means Elohim helps. So that's why Yahweh, through Yahushua, who is Emmanuel, Elohim with us, is helping this man to take him out of the tomb, out of the cave, out of Sheol. Elazar, come out. And he who died came out, bound feet and hands with wrappings, and his face was wrapped with a cloth. Yahushua said to them, see Omar. Can you imagine him like that would be a good presentation, like straight out of Sheol, like instead of Compton, straight out of Sheol. Mm, all right. So, as I was saying, and his face was wrapped with a cloth. Yahushua said to them, loosen him and let him go. Therefore, many of the Yehudim who had come to Miriam and had seen what Yahushua did believed in him. So this was the fourth miracle and last. So that, I mean, if that didn't make them believe, nothing would. So some actually did believe when they saw that somebody who had died 4 days ago was resurrected. Now, it's interesting also that even though Yahushua is bringing Elazar from Sheol, like resurrecting him, I find it interesting mainly because of the image that we may have because of Hollywood and all of that, and how the enemy works. Like I always say, he's the main showman. He likes to show off. That's not something that Yahweh does. Yahushua had to perform these miracles in order for the belief of them to happen, but um, we shouldn't need to see in order to believe, right? So it is interesting that Yahushua said, take away the stone. He gave others that order. He didn't just make the stone levitate and move with his power, which is something that Hollywood would do and we would love to see, right? But also shows how salvation is personal. Yahushua already did his part. He already gave all his power in order for us to be able to be forgiven and saved and justified and everything else, favored. But it is our job to take away the stone. It is our job to take away doubt. We need to do our part, right? So even though Yahushua has the power to bring the dead to life, he's telling them, move the stone, right? I hope that's understood. And not only that, when he comes out bound feet and hands, and his face wrapped with a cloth. right? So he's all covered. He is bound, just like when we were called by Mashiach from sin, from error, we were bound, and we needed to start getting rid of all of that. And for that, also, there were others who would help, right? Those who, well, loved ones, brethren in the faith, etc. Yahushua said to them, loosen him and let him go. Therefore, many of the Yehudim who had come to Miriam and had seen what Yahushua did believed in him. But some of them, always are some of them, but some of them went away to the Pharisees and told them what Yahushua did. So obviously, I mean, it's amazing. I could understand if, which is not the case because the scripture would say it, like if those who believed were like, oh, if the Pharisees saw this, they would believe. We need to tell them, right? But that was not necessarily the intention because just by the fact that it says, but some, that shows that there were the others who didn't believe. They went to talk to the Pharisees, meaning they were bringing information in order for the Pharisees to do something about it. So the chief priests and the Pharisees gathered a council and said, what shall we do? Because this man does many signs. It's amazing. They already knew. So that became a testimony against them because they knew that Yahushua had fulfilled and they even said it. This man does many signs. So what does that mean? Signs are to show something, to reveal that he is. And they are recognizing that he does many signs. And they know what signs. He healed leopards. He healed a mute and deaf. He healed a blind person from birth. And he has raised a dead person after 4 days. That should be enough for them to believe. But instead, they are trying to figure out how to get rid of him. What shall we do? Because this man does many signs. If we let him alone like this, they all shall believe in him. If we let him alone like this, they all shall believe in him. And the Romans shall come and take away from us both our place and our nation. So you see, that was their fear. If we let him alone like this, they all shall believe in him. Why aren't they believing in him? And then he says, and the Romans shall come and take away from us, not from them, from us. So in there, they include themselves, right? They didn't include themselves with the people believing, but now they talk like the power they have is what Romans would take from them. They didn't want to lose that power. They didn't want to lose the temple. And the Romans shall come and take away from us both our place and nation. So they feared the Romans more than they feared Yahweh. They didn't remove the stone. And one of them, Caiaphas, Cephas, and one of them, Caiaphas, being high priest that year, said to them, you know not. This is important because since he was the high priest, even though he was not a believer in Mashiach, he had that position. So by having that position, Yahweh Almighty would speak through him whether he knew it or not. Right? He had his will in order to act against the will of the Father, but he would still be used by the Father in order for the prophecies to be fulfilled. Being high priest that year said to them, now it is interesting that his name was Kepha because it is like the name that Yahushua gave Peter, Keph. Some say Kepha as well. So the position that this person had was taken from him and given to Keph, to Peter. as the representation of Yahushua on this earth. Representation, obviously, because Yahushua still alive at the right hand of the Father as the high priest according to the order of Melchizedek. So, and one of them, Caiaphas, being high priest that year, said to them, "You know not, neither do you consider that it is better for us that one man die for the people than that the entire nation should perish." So he was actually prophesying. He was pretty much interpreting without knowing Isaiah 53, that the Messiah had to come and die for the nation. He had to come and suffer for his people. So him as the high priest spoke, saying, "Neither do you consider that it is better for us that one man die for the people than that the entire nation should perish." But he did not say this from himself, but being high priest that year, he prophesied that Yahushua was about to die for the nation. So Yahweh used them to say this in order for that prophecy to be spoken, because if they don't say it, the stones will speak, right? So you see how Mashiach, remember when he entered Jerusalem, they said, "Shut them up. They are saying that you are the son of David, the Messiah, this and that." And he told them, "If I shut them up, the stones will cry out." Right? So remember what I mentioned regarding move away the stone, the heart of stone. The Pharisees did not do that. So now, but he did not say this from himself, the high priest. But being high priest that year, he prophesied that Yahushua was about to die for the nation. So Caiaphas was being used by Yahweh even though he didn't realize it. He said something because he wanted to kill him, he wanted to get rid of him, but Yahweh was using him to prophesy that Yahushua had to die for us. Like I said, like it was prophesied in Isaiah 53. He did not say this from himself. And this is interesting also because it is how it happens with the angels, the fallen angels. They are like this person. They they rebelled against Yahweh, they reject the Messiah, but they are used by the Most High, even when they think they are doing what they want. So how interesting that Caiaphas means stone, and he's about to be removed like the stone that covered the cave. He's going to be taken out as high priest in order for Mashiach to become the high priest, the cornerstone, right? And he was being replaced on earth by by Peter. So the stone was being removed. First, the stone that covered the cave in the literal sense. Now, the stone that was the high priest of the nation, who is prophesying here by the will of Yahweh, not by his own. But he did not say this from himself. There was something else I wanted to say. Let me see. That if what needs to be said is not said, the stones will cry out. Caiaphas not only means stone, but he has doubt in his heart, which is the stone that he doesn't want to take away to receive the heart of flesh prophesied in Ezekiel, right? So, since these words need to be proclaimed, that Yahushua had to die for the nation, then Yahweh made this stone cry out, Caiaphas. And I repeat, not only his name means stone, but his doubt, his unbelief shows that he had a heart of stone, and all connected to the stone that was removed from the cave. I hope all of that was understood. So he did not say this from himself, but being high priest that year, he prophesied that Yahushua was about to die for the nation. And not for the nation only, but to gather together into one the children of Yahweh who were scattered abroad. So here is talking about not only the Yahudim, but all of Israel that was scattered. Not only the nation of Israel, meaning whoever was inside the borders of the country, but the nation as people, descendants of Israel, also known as Jacob. So from that day on, they plotted to kill him. So imagine how evil they were and still are, that when they realized that he was able to raise the dead, even after the 3 days that they saw as the limit, meaning that he had all the power, what they thought was about killing him. It is amazing how twisted their minds were, right? Which is the sin, the unforgivable sin, the sin of blasphemy against the Ruach HaKodesh. No matter how clear the Ruach was acting right before their eyes and their ears, for everybody was telling them about the signs, they only saw wickedness because they were wicked. So they projected themselves and they saw their own reflection and hated it. So from that day on, they plotted to kill him. Yahushua, therefore, no longer went openly among the Yehudim, but went from there into the country near the wilderness, to a city called Ephraim. The last comes from Joseph through Ephraim, through Nun. So the last comes from Ephraim. So the fact that Yahushua went in secret, meaning like a thief in the night, to a city called Ephraim, represents how the last comes genetically from Ephraim as a thief in the night, in secret. Therefore, no longer went openly among the Yehudim, but went from there into the country near the wilderness to a city called Ephraim and remained there with his taught ones. Now, the Pesach of the Yehudim was near. The two witnesses begin on Pesach. So, how interesting that right before mentioning Pesach, he went hiding as a thief in the night to a city called Ephraim, as the last comes from Ephraim. Right after raising Elazar from the dead, as in right after getting Eliyahu into the true doctrine, then the testimony begins. Now the Pesach of the Yehudim was near, and many went from the country up to Jerusalem before the Pesach to set themselves apart. And so they were seeking Yahushua and spoke among one another. And so they were seeking Yahushua. Remember that Malachi 3:1 says, the sovereign whom you seek shall come suddenly to his temple. And so they were seeking Yahushua and spoke among one another, standing in the set apart place. Him whom you're seeking will come to his set apart place. So this verse goes straight with uh, Malachi 3:1. And so they were seeking Yahushua and spoke among one another, standing in the set apart place. What do you think? Is he not coming to the feast at all? And both the chief priests and the Pharisees had given a command that if anyone knew where he was, he should disclose it in order for them to seize him. So they were already looking for him in order to kill him. So that's how the chapter ends.